It was 2017, near a quiet and isolated area in Punjab, where an old house stood at the end of a broken road. People in the nearby village called it the White House, not because it was beautiful, but because its faded white walls looked lifeless, as if all color had been drained out of it over time. The house had been abandoned for almost 20 years. No one lived there anymore, and anyone who tried never stayed long enough to call it home. Ali, a freelance videographer, had recently been searching for a cheap place to stay. When he heard about the house, he ignored the warnings people gave him. To him, it was just an old building with a story exaggerated by fear. In fact, he saw it as an opportunity. He planned to stay there and record a horror vlog, something that might finally get him the attention he had been chasing online. Ali, a freelance videographer, had recently been searching for a cheap place to stay. When he heard about the house, he ignored the warnings people gave him. To him, it was just an old building with a story exaggerated by fear. In fact, he saw it as an opportunity. He planned to stay there and record a horror vlog, something that might finally get him the attention he had been chasing online. On his first night in the house, everything seemed normal. The silence felt heavy, but not unusual for an abandoned place. Around 12:47 a.m., Ali was setting up his camera, talking casually, as if he were already recording. The air was cold, and every sound echoed a little too clearly, but nothing truly felt wrong. That changed at exactly 1:13 a.m. The lights flickered once, twice, and then went out completely, leaving him in darkness. He quickly turned on his flashlight, brushing off the moment as a power issue. But as soon as the light cut through the darkness, something shifted inside him. It wasn't something he could see or hear clearly. It was a feeling, a quiet, undeniable realization that he was no longer alone. A slow, deliberate sound came from upstairs. It was faint at first, like something gently tapping against wood. Then it became clearer. Footsteps, heavy and slow, moving across the floor above him. Ali hesitated for a moment, then picked up his camera and moved toward the staircase. Each step he took made the sound louder, as if whatever was upstairs was aware of his approach. When he finally reached the top, the hallway was empty, completely still. No movement, no sign that anyone had been there. But when he glanced at the small screen of his camera, his breath caught in his throat. Behind him, on the screen, stood a shadow. It was shaped like a person, tall and unmoving, just inches away from where he stood. Ali turned around instantly, his heart racing. But there was nothing there. The space behind him was empty. He looked back at the camera screen, and the shadow was still there, perfectly still, as if it had never moved at all. His voice came out weaker than he expected as he called out, asking if anyone was there. The house gave no answer, but his camera did. The screen flickered, and a distorted voice came through the recording. It was low and quiet, almost like a whisper carried through static. "You're here." The words sent a chill through him that he couldn't explain. He tried to steady himself, telling himself it had to be some kind of glitch, but his hands were already starting to shake. He reached for his phone, hoping to distract himself, but before he could even unlock it, the screen lit up on its own. The gallery opened without his touch. A video began to play. Ali stared at the screen, confusion turning into fear as he realized what he was seeing. It was him, standing in the same house, wearing the same clothes. The angle was different, but there was no doubt it was him. But in the video, he wasn't calm. He was terrified. He was screaming, telling himself not to come there. The sound of his own voice filled the silence around him, desperate and broken. Ali felt his chest tighten as he tried to remember when he could have recorded something like that, but no memory came. The video reached its end, and for a brief moment, the screen went completely black. Then a face appeared. It wasn't his. It was pale and still, its features barely visible, but its presence was enough to freeze him in place. The eyes seemed to look directly at him, even through the screen, before everything suddenly shut off. The house fell silent again. At the far end of the hallway, there was a door he hadn't paid much attention to before. It was old, slightly different from the others, and locked. He remembered, vaguely, that someone had mentioned a room that should never be opened. At the time, it had sounded like superstition. Now, it felt like a warning he should have taken seriously. Drawn by something he didn't fully understand, Ali walked toward the door. His hand hesitated on the handle, but before he could decide whether to open it, he felt it move on its own. The lock clicked. The door slowly creaked open. Inside, the room was almost empty. There was a single wooden chair placed in the center, and an old mirror hanging on the wall in front of it. The air inside felt colder than the rest of the house, thick and unmoving. Written across the surface of the mirror were the words, "We see you." Ali stepped closer, unable to stop himself. He looked into the mirror, expecting to see only his own reflection. For a moment, that was all there was. Then he noticed something else. Behind him, reflected in the glass, were figures. 5 of them. They stood close together, their shapes dark and unclear, as if they were not fully part of the world around them. Their faces were blurred, but their eyes were not. Their eyes were fixed on him, unblinking. Ali spun around, but the room behind him was empty. When he turned back to the mirror, the figures were still there. Before he could react, the door slammed shut behind him with a force that shook the walls. The lights in the room went out instantly, plunging everything into darkness so complete that it felt suffocating. He tried to move, to find the door, but he couldn't see anything. The air felt closer, heavier, as if the room itself was closing in around him. Then he felt something near his ear. A breath. And a voice. So close, it didn't feel like sound, but like something pressing directly into his mind. It told him that he belonged there now. Ali shouted, his voice breaking as he begged to be let out. He pushed against the door, searched blindly for a way out, but nothing worked. The darkness seemed endless, swallowing every movement, every sound. Then another voice answered him. Calm, certain. It told him he had said those same words before. After that night, no one ever saw Ali again. The house remained empty, just as it had been before, standing quietly at the end of the road, as if nothing had happened. 3 months later, someone new moved in. On his first night, at exactly 1:13 a.m., the lights flickered and went out. And in the darkness, a voice welcomed him. It told him that he had arrived. The man who moved into the house never told anyone his real reason for coming there. To the villagers, he was just another outsider looking for a cheap place to stay. But unlike the others, he didn't ignore the stories. He listened carefully. He asked questions. And most importantly, he had heard the name before. Ali. That name meant nothing to the village anymore. It had already been swallowed by time, just like the others. But for him, it was different. Because Ali was his brother. For months he had been searching. No calls, no messages, no trace. The last signal of Ali's phone had come from that area, and it led him straight to the house at the end of the road. The same house people were too afraid to even look at after sunset. On his first night inside, he didn't unpack. He didn't try to make the place feel like home. He simply sat in the center of the room, waiting, as if he already knew something would happen. And it did. At exactly 1:13 a.m., the lights flickered. Then, darkness. He didn't panic. He whispered into the silence, calling Ali's name, his voice steady, but heavy with something deeper than fear. The house didn't respond immediately. It never did. It waited. Then the sound began. Slow footsteps from upstairs. He stood up and followed them without hesitation, moving through the darkness like he had done it before, even though this was his first time inside. The hallway at the top was just as empty as it had been for Ali, but he didn't need to look around. He already knew where to go. The locked door. This time, it wasn't locked. It was already open. The room inside looked exactly the same. The chair, the mirror, the words written across it, still faint but visible. We see you. He stepped inside. For a moment, nothing happened. Then he looked into the mirror. At first, he saw only himself. Tired eyes, a face worn down by weeks of searching. But then, the reflection shifted, slowly, unnaturally, as if the mirror was remembering something it had seen before. Shapes appeared behind him, one by one. Not 5 this time. 6. His breath caught as he realized what that meant. One of them stepped forward. Its shape became clearer, more defined, until it stood closer than the others. And then he saw the face. It was Ali, but not the way he remembered him. His expression was empty, his eyes hollow, as if whatever had been inside him was no longer there. Yet somehow he was still looking directly at him, still aware, still trapped. The man turned around instantly, his heart pounding. But the room behind him was empty. When he looked back at the mirror, Ali was still there, closer now, his reflection almost touching the surface from the other side. Then, slowly, Ali raised his hand and pressed it against the glass. For a brief second, the man didn't move. He didn't think. He just reacted. He stepped forward and placed his own hand against the mirror, aligning it with Ali's. The glass was cold. Too cold. And then it wasn't glass anymore. His hand sank through it. Before he could pull back, something grabbed him from the other side. A force stronger than anything he could resist pulled him forward. The world around him twisted, stretched, and then collapsed into darkness. The room went silent again. The mirror returned to normal. The chair stood untouched, and the house went still. Days passed. Then, weeks. No one saw the man again. But the house was never truly empty. Late at night, If someone stood far enough down the road and listened carefully, they could sometimes hear faint sounds drifting through the darkness. Footsteps, whispers, and occasionally voices. More than one. Because the house did not forget. It did not forgive. It only waited. And each time someone new stepped inside, the reflection in the mirror grew. Not 5, not 6, but more. Always more. And if you ever find yourself standing in front of that mirror, and you notice someone behind you, don't turn around. Because if you do, you might realize you were never alone. And by then, it's already too late.